Good morning and welcome to the morning bulletin on the Blood Red channel. My name's Andrew Beasley. I'm joined this morning by Dave Comerford, and obviously there's only one subject on the agenda today, and that's the match last night, Liverpool winning 2-1 against West Ham United. Seemed like a slightly unusual occurrence in that Liverpool went behind and actually came back to win the game, which hasn't happened too often this season. They've done it a couple of times at Anfield. They did it against Newcastle with a late winner, very late winner, and they did it against Leicester with a pair of own goals.
Yeah,
but they haven't fought back on the road very much this season. So obviously it was great to get 3 points having conceded first. But Dave, what are your sort of general thoughts on the match?
I mean, that was the main thing that stood out to me, to be fair. I think the only game where we have gone behind away and come back to win was Rangers in the Champions League. Obviously, the comeback there was pretty emphatic with 7 goals. But it's a first for this team. It's a sign, always, I think, of a resilient team when you can trail on the road and then fight your way back into it. Obviously, those qualities have deserted Liverpool far too often. It used to be an area they sort of specialised in. This season, not so much. But I think a big step in the right direction. You know, there was the win against Leeds, the kind of game Liverpool had lost so much this season. That was an emphatic victory. This was a different kind of win. Where Liverpool did have to battle back from obviously going a goal down. And I think it was a victory they deserved. I think they dominated the game. Both teams had big chances, but Liverpool certainly edged it. And much as West Ham might be, a little bit aggrieved about the penalty decision at the end, I think ultimately Liverpool came away with 3 points that they merited.
Yeah, I think so too. I was a bit unsure about the penalty. I mean, I saw it and I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be given as a penalty. Obviously, a lot of debate on that on Twitter, people giving their opinions. Understandably, I think we've reached a point where no one's really sure what's going to be given for handball or not. I'll be honest, I was surprised it wasn't given. What did you think of it?
I was similar to you. When I saw it in normal time, it looked like it was going to be given as a penalty. For me, I know it's my job to know the rules, but honestly, I just see some of these handballs and it does feel like a little bit of a guessing game, to be honest. And it's hard to kind of look at one incident and apply it to another, really, because in the back of my mind, there probably have been times this season where there has been given as a penalty. So I think maybe letter of the law, it's not. I mean, I've seen something today which suggests that if basically the ball is struck at you from kind of an immediate distance, then, you get away with it on proximity, basically. And much as Thiago was lunging in, which is the comment that he's made after the game, I think that's probably the reason why he's got away with it. Having said that, if it was the other way around, I'm sure Liverpool fans would be furious too. But you do need, if you are going to accept that this is luck, you do need that luck at this stage of the season. And I don't think Liverpool have had too much of it over the course of the campaign. These things do even themselves out. And for Liverpool to win all their games, which is what they might well have to do to get top 4, they are going to need a healthy dose of fortune along the way. And maybe that's what we got right at the end against West Ham.
Yeah, possibly. I'll just read something I saw yesterday because I was copied in on a conversation with Dale Johnson of ESPN, who I'm sure people are familiar with. He does all the stuff on VAR and why decisions are given and not given. And I, in the conversation, mentioned that I thought it was probably going to be given. And he says we've not seen one like that in the Premier League. Champions League, yes, but I'd point you to what UEFA Football Board said this week, telling UEFA to stop giving these handballs. So I think it might be something we're expecting to see because there's been some very soft ones in the Champions League. Certainly Bayern Munich, Man City springs to mind and stuff like that. And that's possibly conditioning us to think, oh, well, that's going to be given when actually the Premier League, he says, hasn't been so bad for that. I'm not sure if that's right, but he's kind of the expert on this. But don't want to dwell on that too much. Let's sort of bask in the win. Thought it was a good performance. Once again, Trent Alexander-Arnold, particularly first half, I thought, showing again the benefits of this system. I think we saw possibly not so much necessarily the flaws of this system, but, teams are used to attacking Liverpool down their right defensive channel, and West Ham were able to do that first half. Obviously, Ben Rama got on the ball quite a lot down there and stuff like that. But how did you think the sort of tactical system worked last night, and how do you think it's sort of shaping up generally overall? I think we're sort of 4 games in that they've been playing this. And how do you think things are going, really?
Well, last night was interesting because was it the first time within this system that there's been a change to the team? Or there certainly hasn't been too many changes, obviously enforced with Matip coming in for Konate, who wasn't able to play. Yeah. So people had concerns about that in terms of how well was Matip going to be able to cover the right channel, because I think one of Konate's big strengths as a centre-back is how comfortable he is when he gets dragged out wide to defend. Matip obviously played very well. He was on Liverpool's better players on the night. So that was reassuring, because you don't want a system that only works for 11 players or only works for a small group of players within your squad. It needs to kind of be one that people can step into, because certainly with Liverpool in particular, there are going to be absences over the course of the season, given that many of the players are injury prone. So it needs to be a little bit kind of proofed against those. So that was a good sign. I think obviously there are teething problems with the system, but generally speaking, it has been very, very solid. The uplift's been very significant as well in terms of performances. I mean, it's basically turned Liverpool season around late on, but to get 10 points from a possible 12, I think the results kind of speak for themselves in that way. And you have a system that more than anything else gets the best out of your best playmaker, and you're not really going to go far wrong with that. Myself and Matt did the Liverpool.com podcast on this week, where we talked about how it's affecting players like Henderson, Robertson and Salah as well, and overall it has been a big net positive. And I'm just excited to see what it looks like after a full pre-season as well, because as much as Klopp has had breaks this year with no Champions League to work on it, to have kind of that luxury of that most valuable training time all year, I think he said in Germany the training camp will be, so to get on those pitches and hone it down, I think it'll be much more effective, and maybe some of the gaps that we've seen now can hopefully be ironed out. I mean, one thing that has intrigued me recently on it, Andrew, because obviously there's been a lot of discussion about this. Do you see a need for kind of a right back to come in and maybe Trent to almost commit to the midfield move? Because the way I see it, I think we can make it work with Trent just kind of playing as a right back or a midfielder, depending on who's got the ball. But would you feel a bit more secure within the system if Trent was kind of a committed midfielder and he had that right back behind him, without maybe asking that right-sided centre-back to do too much work on that side?
No, I think it's probably better as it is, with him primarily as a right back and moving in when the situation allows it, basically. I think you could argue it's more interesting to think about, do you need a left back who's sort of more of a centre back? Obviously, we see it with Manchester City using guys like Ake out there on the left. And I'm sort of more inclined to think that way. I mean, as much as I love Andy Robertson and what he brings to the team, if they're going to stick to this system, you'd sort of make the most of it for Trent over Robertson. That's just the facts of it, because Trent's the better player. So no, I think Trent should stay primarily as a right back, because we have to remember the games we've seen this in haven't been the toughest fixtures. Yes, there was Arsenal, but that was Liverpool went 2-0 down in that game and then kind of had to go for broke, and they did so very well. But that was obviously an unusual occurrence. And then the other 3 games have been against teams who have basically been struggling for most of the season. So as well as it's going, there's harder tests ahead. Be interesting to see how it plays against Tottenham. Obviously, they're not in a good place, but theoretically a stronger team. So that will be interesting. But no, I'd be sticking with Trent primarily as a right back, moving in when appropriate.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. I think it's something that can work. You just got to make sure you kind of preserve the balance within the system. And it is a really intriguing one with Robertson, because he has been probably one of Liverpool's better players this season. But when me and Matt were doing that podcast, like I mentioned, he actually picked out Robertson as the one you look at and say could be a loser of this system. And I know he still managed to pick up assists even with it, but they've been kind of set pieces, so you wouldn't want to read too much into those. And it's about, if it is going to be Robertson, it's going to be about picking those moments, basically, of when he can go forward, and do we have enough sort of protection left behind him to kind of make sure that that's not taking too many chances, really. So it is a big dilemma in terms of where he fits in. And, there's a couple of people in the comments saying they'd like to see a centre back come in too, just to kind of to cover that role. Maybe the name I sort of thought was Vardy. I know obviously he's not going to be attainable, but just as an example, someone who can kind of is the centre back, but also has played left back would be sort of ideal for that role. But then again, you're starting to think, you've got arguably the best left back in the world, and you might not be able to. I mean, you might still be able to accommodate him, but is it the role that kind of suits him? And one thing we should say actually on this, I suppose, this might not be the system every game. It might be that Klopp decides next season that it's going to be match dependent, which is kind of an intriguing, variation. And then maybe there will be games where Robertson is kind of in that more traditional role. Whether that's going to cause too much of a headache to move the system around all the time, I don't know. But it's there's a few intriguing dilemmas with it, but we are picking holes. I suppose it's our job to do that, but we're picking holes in a system that has, broadly speaking, been very successful for Liverpool so far and has really restored the optimism around the season, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. I think the good thing is that you can, the opposition team are going to get the team sheet and it says, Trent Robertson as sort of fullback, so that's what they're expecting, but they don't know how Liverpool are going to play, and that just opens it up straight away. Now, obviously, if Trent starts playing that inverted sort of midfield role, they're going to pick on it pretty quickly, but they're not automatically going to know in advance, what teams are going to do and what Liverpool are going to do, and stuff like that. So it just adds a whole new dimension without having to change the personnel, which is just really exciting, really. And obviously, we'll see what happens with the transfers in the summer as well. Obviously, whoever comes in may shape thinking on quite what system they're going to go with. Just before we go, quick word, I wanted to mention Curtis Jones, because I thought he had a good game, very high on the charts for progressive carries, progressive passes. I think we saw some of his issues, hanging on to the ball a little bit too long and stuff like that. There was still some of that, but very good at helping Liverpool get the ball up the pitch. Just wondered what you sort of thought about his performance.
I think the thing I'd say about Jones is, I want to see Thiago come into the team, but if you're asking me who drops out of Jones and Henderson, I'd probably go with Henderson, to be honest, because I think Jones has probably outperformed in the past couple of games. I don't necessarily think Jones has been, as great as a lot of people do, and that's just my opinion. And I certainly, it's certainly no issue at all with seeing him in there. Liverpool are winning, that's the main thing. But of the two, I think he probably has edged Henderson, and it'd be interesting to see then if we see Thiago in maybe that more unusual right-sided number 8 role at the weekend against Tottenham with Jones keeping his place, because I don't know if you know this, Andrew, and you're obviously the guy to come to for this, but is this the longest run of starts he's ever had in Liverpool shirt? Because I certainly can't recall many where he's played this consistently.
Not sure off the top of my head, but you could well be right. I know obviously 2021, he got quite a lot of games in that season towards the end of the campaign and stuff like that. But certainly it's rare for him to get this many starts.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So interesting one. Obviously, Dave and I and the rest of the guys will be writing about the game, no doubt, today and looking ahead to Tottenham and trying to figure out what the midfield will be for that game. But so stick with us on Liverpool.com. Lots of stuff coming up. And we'll see you again tomorrow.